Jenny and Nancy are back with another segment on the wellness series. Today we're going to talk about emotional wellness. And it's a big one. It can be a pretty hot topic. But it's not just having feelings. We all have feelings. It's what do we do with those feelings that's important. You know, we're allowed, and don't feel like you want people to walk around as zombies without feelings. But we are allowed to feel whatever we feel. It's just how do we process it? How do we deal with it in a positive way? And it's how to express our feelings through all of our feelings, whether it's rage or anger or love or compassion, sadness. And there's a lot of different resources out there for all of us. There's really nothing wrong. You're entitled to feel the way you feel. It's just part of being human and staying emotionally well. So I'm hoping I'm going to say this. We're coming to the end of the pandemic, okay? Knock on wood. Coming through these last 14 months or so has really been difficult. And for the school children, for the parents who are homeschooling their children, for elderly people, for, people in nursing facilities.
People who are furloughed from their jobs.
Yeah.
People who had to adjust from working in an office to working at home, back to working in an office. Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
So everybody, and having empathy and compassion for everybody's journey is so important. And it's tough. It's tough, but having those tools in your toolbox, like if you're feeling kind of low, instead of, let the feeling, feel the feeling, but now what can you do about it? But like I said, the pandemic has really affected everybody in a lot of ways. The silver lining is people feel more comfortable talking about their feelings. It's
Definitely.
not something that's off limits, and people are seeking resources, whether it's through therapy, talk therapy, or counseling. And I know there's a need for those professions in our culture. These men and women are working diligently to help people process their emotions and in a healthy way. In a destructive way, we might turn to excessive use of substances, drinking, smoking, alcohol, drugs. Even exercise can be damaging. You can over-exercise yourself in a way that's damaging to you. You end up injuring yourself.
Overeating, undereating, those are things too that a lot of times when we are stressed, a lot of times whether it's intentional or not, a lot of times our body has this reaction of I'm not hungry or I want to eat everything in sight. And like we've talked about, I think in every single video, balance is key. So learning how to process those emotions, and whether you need to do that alone or with somebody, whether it's a professional or a friend or a family member, sometimes a colleague, if it's a work thing, that can work out. Sometimes your pet. My dogs are wonderful therapists.
My cats are too.
They listen to everything that I have to say.
And they don't judge.
And no judgment. But no, figuring out how to process those emotions and what to do with them, and sometimes figuring out why you're feeling them. Those can be healthy ways to deal with those emotions. And when we talk about dealing with our emotions, that is something else that goes into this. Is she was talking about bottling them up. Don't do it. Because when we bottle up, we're not dealing with our emotions. We are not fully experiencing them. And we talked about social during our social wellness video about toxic people, and even including toxic positivity, people who are like, just feel good, just be happy, everything's positive. Sometimes we just need to be in our feelings and be sad, mad, upset, frustrated, neutral sometimes. Be in those emotions, be in the moment, experience them, and then once you're done experiencing them, move forward. I'm pretty sure it's Beyonce who says that in an interview, she said she gives herself 24 hours to be in a rotten mood. She's like, I will deal with this in 24 hours, and then I'm going to get back to being my fabulous self. And that works for her. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. But that's an example of we all deal differently. And if you need to give yourself an hour, 24 hours.
Well, I just wrote that down. Some people have a 15-minute rule. Because
That's a
if
good
you're
one.
really angry and you're at work, you don't have 24 hours.
Right.
You know, you got to figure it out. You got to have a touchstone, something that's going to help bring you back to your center. And a lot of times when we are feeling a range of emotions, it's a feeling that we're out of control, that things are beyond our control. And that wonderful Serenity Prayer
Oh, yes.
is very big, is very popular, and very, very true. You know, we can't control anybody. We can only control ourselves. We can't control how somebody else responds to a situation. We can only control how we respond. And the pandemic has pushed us all because we've lost control of so many things. And like I said, I'm very hopeful that we're coming out of it, and we're going to have a new and a better way of life for everybody. But what are some tools that you could put into your emotional toolbox? One of my favorite is journaling. You know, writing down, and journal like nobody else is going to read it. You know, don't censor what you're writing. But then just be very careful of who has access to it. But journaling is a wonderful way to help process your emotions. And like I mentioned earlier, some type of therapy, whether it's talking to a therapist or a social worker, there's help out there for us. And several companies have the EAP program, the Employee Assisted Plan, where ask your employer if there's any type of emotional support available, whether it's, you know, and again, emotional support for finances, if you're going through a divorce, if you're going through a struggle. We're talking about the pandemic, but there's a lot of different things that trigger emotional responses in all of us.
Absolutely. And it's being able to maintain that emotional health is going to help in so many different areas of life. And we've talked about in a lot of our videos components that either play into emotional health, directly affect it, how dealing with our emotional health can help in other areas. And our friends are very inviting
We
today.
must smell good today.
Nancy mentioned the Serenity Prayer, and that's super popular. There are so many different spiritual, cultural, religious, any sort of practices. There are a lot of different ways of dealing with stress and emotional health from around the world. Sometimes your spiritual practice will directly talk about stress and how to deal with it, and sometimes it's like an indirect thing. So you can find an outlet for how to deal with this in a lot of different ways, some of them that we have talked about.
Yeah. And, you know, again, and if you have a spiritual or religious practice, if there's somebody in your church or congregation or your temple or synagogue that, you know, is available to talk to, I mean, there's certainly that avenue as well. We're just trying to touch on all aspects that we can think of while chewing the flies and the bees today.
A mentor, an elder, any sort of person who has been in that, possibly in your situation, possibly, you know, helped people through those kind of things, whatever you call them in your religio-cultural, spiritual community. These are just examples, and we are not trying to exclude anyone. This applies to everybody.
Yes.
We might just be using different words.
Well said.
Just
So-
to make sure everyone feels welcome and invited and included in this, because we are talking about emotional wellness for everyone.
I think a big part of emotional wellness too is allowing. I enjoy my meditation. That's
Absolutely.
my touchstone.
Yes.
Whether it's a walking meditation or a sitting meditation. And I know when I first started, I struggled to sit still for 5 minutes. But it's a practice. That's why they call it a meditation practice. But about our emotional well-being, I think allowing ourselves time to play can do a lot for our emotional health as well as our physical health and social health. So we don't play a lot as American adults.
It's true.
That's not high on our list of things to do. Yet when you watch a child at play and you see the joy and the excitement, and they're learning because they're experiencing something in a different way and they're figuring things out. I'd love to see more of us as adults, not in formal play, but just, grab a frisbee, go out, pitch some horseshoes,
Yeah.
play. Try to figure out a way to incorporate play into your routine.
And it may sound silly, and the example that I am about to give is probably sounds silly. A group of grown adults that I am friends with, actually my spiritual community, we went on a nature walk and we flew kites, and while we did this we wore butterfly and fairy wings because it was fun. And we were at a park, and like we grilled, we did not care what anyone thought. And I think because we went into it with this open, like, we're going to play, we're going to let our inner child, that was actually the topic we had been discussing in book club, was letting our inner child come out and play. And so we dedicated an entire park day to it. We were there for about 7 hours, and we completely lost track of time because we were just having so much fun. We had people complimenting our fairy wings and our butterfly wings, and they thought it was just the greatest thing that there was this group of adults that were just letting their inner childs come out and play. So if you feel reservations about doing that, chances are people are going to look at you and be like, man, I wish I could do that. Mm-hmm. They're not going to make fun of you. They're going to be like, whoo, I look up to this person. So go for it. Let that inner child out. Have some fun.
I love that.
Wear butterfly wings at a park.
There you go. There you go. So emotional wellness, what are some characteristics of positive mental, emotional health, positive self-esteem? We are so culturized to beating ourselves up for negative self-talk. So really try to focus on, say something positive about yourself every day. Give yourself a compliment,
Look in the mirror when you do it.
Yeah, don't expect perfection. A sense of belonging. Like Jenny said, she had a group of her spiritual group in the park, and they had fun. Try to create a sense of belonging, whether it's within your family or your neighborhood or your apartment complex. Here at the Y, there was definitely a sense of belonging that people missed during the pandemic, and
Absolutely.
A nice social connection. Why don't you do the sense of purpose there?
Oh, we did. So we talked about sense of purpose, I think, in career wellness, but this also applies to emotional wellness, spiritual wellness. It's, you find something that drives you. You find something that you're passionate about, that you care about, that you want to dedicate time to. And in turn, it will make you feel better. I think there's an episode of Friends where Phoebe is talking about doing something selfless. And she tells Joey that she finally figured out the most selfless act of all. She let a bee sting her, so it felt big and tough in front of its bee friends. And
that sounds like Phoebe.
And then I think somebody said, well, did you feel good about doing that? And Phoebe was like, well, yes. Oh no! Like, no matter what we do, we're going to feel good about doing these things. So that sense of purpose is, and that's okay. The bee example is to say that if we find a sense of purpose that is helping others, we will feel good in turn, and that is all right. That is okay to feel good about our purpose. I think if we all had purposes that we didn't feel good about, I don't know that would actually be a purpose.
No.
Or at least it would be a miserable one. So feeling good about your drive and your passion and what you want to do, that is also taking care of yourself emotionally. And it's
paying it forward.
Yeah, that's a big one.
When somebody does something nice for you, and we're seeing more acts of kindness in our community and across the globe as well, having a positive outlook. Again, if you can focus on 3 things to be grateful for, gratitude is huge in our emotional, mental, spiritual well-being. Are you a glass half empty person or a glass half full? And sometimes you're going to be kind of like that glass is running a little low. But what are 3 things that you are grateful for today? It could be that I'm grateful that I have a pen that's writing well today.
Yeah.
It's not running out of ink, because we've all been there. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do this with Jenny, and I'm grateful that I have some cool water to drink. It doesn't have to be anything monumental, but when we start training our brains to think positively, then more of those positive emotions come through.
Absolutely. I think we've actually talked about the attitude of gratitude before. We've talked about grounding and centering. We've talked about balance in like everything. So this emotional wellness topic is kind of like the underlying foundation for a lot of things that we've talked about. And it circulates and goes back around and interlocks with everything else. So important. So very important. Keep that balance.
Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys next time.
Alrighty. Have a great day.